Hey, good morning, Canada, or good evening, Canada. How you going, Jack?
Awesome. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. It's I keep getting confused about this whole time zone difference thing. I remember
Yeah, yeah.
the last time when we spoke to Salem and stuff. Like I was up the wrong day, but it's all good now. We finally got it in the first shot. How's things in Canada?
Oh, things are pretty awesome here. Still locked down like everybody else is, but for me, that hasn't been a bad thing. So,
Oh, good, good. So you've taken the time to get creative, or?
yeah, kind of taking some time to sort of reinvent my style. Do some things that I've wanted to do for a long time. I can do just about everything I do anyway from here. So it hasn't affected me much. And it's just working from home and doing other things from home. I'm able to kind of say, oh, I'm going to go play my guitar for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's a luxury. I don't think many people have, to be so passionate and creative at home.
Yeah, well, we're really lucky, and that's kind of the One Soul Thrust thing. It's kind of the choice we made when we started One Soul Thrust. This is going to be not something we have to do anymore. It's something that we do because we love it, so we do it our way. And
Yeah.
definitely not a hobby, but nobody's telling us how we ride. So
Yeah, well, yeah, so you can kind of do it in your own pace. Like you don't have a,
yeah.
because I think the last time we spoke to Salem, like it was like you weren't on a label, so you do everything exactly, like you have all the creative freedom.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and and it lets us, we call it a secret rock society, and it lets us sort of, we might have a smaller fan base, but we really can connect with just about everybody who likes us, and who listens to us and who interacts, and anybody is welcome to, be a fan of the Facebook page and check our social media, all of those things, and it just lets us really feel like we have a connection with the people who support us.
Yeah. Well, so how did that secret rock society come up? And like, do you mind just elaborating a little bit about that term? Because I love the term. It's cool. It sounds mysterious.
Well, it sounds mysterious, but I think it kind of just comes from we witnessed, the changes that we witnessed in the music industry, say in the last 20 years, 25 years. At the time I started playing, things were quite a bit different. Anybody could start a band, cover band, originals band, whatever, and you could go out and you could play every night, and you could tour around the country and play, and that doesn't really happen anymore. The music industry as it was sort of fell away, and more often than not now they want you to pay to play in a club. Or if it's not a pay to play, they want you to be a cover band doing somebody else's music. So we kind of that's never really where we've come from. It's always been about doing the music that we feel comfortable doing and doing it our way, and technology being what it is, and the skills that we all collectively have. We're able to say we can be self-contained. We're going to do this. We're going to do this the way we like. And, the people who like it are welcome to come along,
Mm-hmm. So in regards to that whole pay to play, like how does that work? Because again, it sounds so obnoxious to me. If you're an original band, you have to pay to gig.
Or even cover bands sometimes, and it's something that really doesn't make sense. And it kind of, the pay to play thing started quite a long time ago. I think sort of probably the mid or late 90s. And I don't know what it's like anywhere else in the world, but where we are in Western Canada, it's how do you be nice about it? The club owners are in business too, right? They need to make their living. And at some point, somebody thought it was a good idea to, number one, stop paying the bands. Well, what are you saying about your talent? What are you saying about your bands when you don't think they're worth being paid for what they do? If your toilet backs up it's worth paying the plumber to come in and fix it. The pay to play sort of became more of a thing of, well, we're going to sell you an opportunity to come and play. We don't really take this seriously, but if we can get some money from you and you sell some beers, well then, come on in. And there are a lot of clubs that it's not that way, but as a musician or an artist or a business person, a person running a business or doing anything, you got to be crazy to say, hey, I'm going to go pay to do my gig. And it just seems to be that's the way it is around here, at least where we are. I don't want to really be negative about it. It's just how it is, and it's just a game that we just don't play that way. We love playing live, and we don't get to do it as much as we would like to, again, because of the way everything has just changed. People don't go see live bands as much as they used to either. So, without going, really too far with all of that, it just kind of pay to play is the concept where, if you want to play, you gotta pony up the cash and then you can come and play. And then, I don't know, when I started playing, it used to be, a club would hire you to come in and play. And if people liked you and you were bringing people in, they were happy to pay you. They were, people were coming in, enjoying the band. They were dancing, they were buying food, they were drinking and all of that. And it just doesn't go that way anymore. So.
Well, it's just like I said, it seems so like it's completely the opposite here. Like live music is thriving so much in Perth, and there's so many clubs, supporting local acts, and they would put 3 or 4 upcoming bands on the bill for one night, and each get 30, 40 minutes, and you swap the stage over, and everybody brings their friends down and have a good time, and there's just so much of that here, and and that's why I was just so surprised when I heard the whole pay to play term, because
I don't know if it's a North America thing, maybe, because I know that gigging in Europe is the way it should be, and I know it's like that in the UK, but it seems like the States and Canada, it seems like just something is changed or is different, we're in the Great North, and I don't really know where that all comes from, but But
it's funny though, because like to most upcoming bands, or I suppose most bands in general, touring North America and touring Europe, kind of like is the two pillars of touring. That is way, if you can get into Europe, do all the summer festivals. If you do, a good 5, 6, 7 weeks touring North America, that's it. That's what everybody sort of dreams of. So it just sounds, it sounds almost contradicting that you have to go over there and start paying to gig.
Well, and it's, I suppose once you get above a certain level, that stops, but they don't really let bands get to that certain level anymore, it's definitely not a thing of commitment. And like I say, I don't want to belabor it too much, but if you have to work that much harder to do what you do, if you're not nurtured, how are you going? How are you going to grow?
Exactly.
You got to do all these other things, and then you do your art in the time that's left over. How does it get to develop?
It's strange times.
Yeah,
it's it's definitely different to what it used to be, for sure. But speaking of, like you were talking about it changing back in the 90s. But when did your musical journey begin? Like, how did you sort of how did you get introduced to music?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was 13, but as long as I can remember, I've always had a really deep interest in music. I can remember, when I was growing up, I grew up in a Lutheran Christian family, and so it was church every Sunday and all of that, and it was like, you're going to make a 4-year-old sit in church for 2 hours or 1 hour or whatever. But what got it? There were 2 things that got it through me there, and one was my mother's father, my grandfather. He was an usher, so I used to always go get to sit with Grandpa, right, 4 or 5 years old, and I always got a stick of gum. So that was one reason why I would go without complaining and why I would sit there and be happy. But the other one was, we were an evangelical Lutheran church. And for years, I always thought that meant music. You know, I didn't know every church has an organist. You know, I didn't know every church has a choir. But, you know, we had a choir loft up in the back, and my uncle sang in the choir, and there was an organist down front, and these amazing sounds that come out front. And I would just sit there, and I would sit through everything else just for the choir to start singing or the organist to start playing, because those sounds always amazed me, you know. And then same thing, you know, around that time, maybe 6 or 7, I can remember sort of what you call the ignition moment, you know, the moment where it really, it took root and it was part of you. And I was watching a TV show, I was 6 or 7, and they were playing the credits at the beginning, and they were playing the theme song. And just all of a sudden I had visions of machines moving, you know, and they were moving in the rhythm of this theme song, right? And just in my mind, I'm seeing all these things just working together around this music. And I went, that's really cool. You know, and so music has always kind of been that thing for me, this kind of machine where people work together to make something happen, and the equipment works together, and, you know, you put something together that's greater than the whole, you know. So that was way early. And of course, you know, piano lessons. I had a great aunt who was a really good piano player, well-trained piano player, and she would give us lessons. I wasn't too interested in piano. But like I say, when I was 13, I started playing guitar, and it was kind of a choice that was at the time made for me. I'm left-handed, but I'm one of those people that in school they made you write right-handed because something was wrong with you if you were left-handed. So I started out to actually be a drummer. You know, when I got out of grade 6, you go into grade 7, all of a sudden they had this thing called band. You had band class, and that was awesome. And it's like, okay, this is my time. If I can't play bugle, I want to play drums, right? And I literally said that. They put, what do you want to play? And I put bugle, and it was like the instructor, the teacher, it was almost like she didn't know what a bugle was, right? He said, well, we don't have one of those. I said, okay, drums. Well, everybody wanted to play drums. So there were 4 drummers in band class. You know, I made the cut. But because I was left-handed, one of the only things I can't do right-handed is play drums. Right. You know, my hi-hat has to be here. The toms have to go around this way. So every time it came to band class, and you got 1 hour, maybe twice a week, if I was going to play drums, we would have to tear the kit down and reset it and everything. Well, that would never happen. So I'd always get stuck on percussion. Well, we had 2 other guys, you know, who weren't on the kit, because 1 guy's on the kit and 3 of us, you know, playing percussion. That was just too much. So they gave me a freaking French horn. And it's like, no, I'm done with that, you know. So, and at the same time, I was really into riding motorcycles. My best friend, his father bought him a dirt bike and bought a matching one for himself, which really was kind of for me because we were best friends. So, you know, we used to ride motorcycles together. And I always said to my mom, I said, can I have a motorcycle? Can I have a motorcycle? Can I have a motorcycle? And it was like, well, I'm not buying you one, but you save your money. I had a paper route, right? So I did. I diligently saved money. I mowed lawns. I did extra things to get all this money together. I was about 12. I started that project. And finally, I was 13, and I had enough money to buy a little 8ECC motorcycle. I said to my mom, I said, oh, I'm going down to buy my motorcycle today. And she said, no, you're not. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you're not buying a motorcycle. I said, you said I could have a motorcycle if I saved enough money to buy one, and I've got enough money to buy one. She said, well, I didn't really think you'd save that money. So I went, fine. And I walked out of the house and I went downtown and I signed myself up for guitar lessons, paid for 3 months of guitar lessons and rented a guitar. And that was it. I started playing guitar, you know, because it was something I had always wanted to do. Yeah. And I'm still a guitar player to this day. And I probably wouldn't be riding motorcycles anymore. So, you know, kind of, at some point I'm going to have to say to my mom, you know what, you made the wrong choice that day, because I would have gone through motorcycles in a couple of years, but I'm still a musician, you know. So that's a great story. Yeah. And that was, you know, and, you know, like I say, I was always interested in music. So starting to play guitar, I was always listening to music, you know, and having something where I could hear I could hear music, and then I could sit down and I could figure it out, you know, and I could play. I took lessons for 2 years, but I very quickly got into, you know, what my ears would tell me and what I could learn and figure out on my own. You know, so things just kind of progressed from there.
So back in the early days when you just started playing, like what sort of music were you listening to? Because obviously, like, you know, when you pick up an instrument, like you gotta try and sort of connect to some other music. Like very rarely do you just play whatever the teacher sticks in your hand, especially if you're saying you were 13. Like I'm sure you had some hormones going there, you know. So there's probably got to be like,
sure.
So what sort of music were you sort of influenced by?
Well, you know, radio was still really, really big, right? So I used to listen to the local rock radio stations. FM radio was just really starting to happen in Canada at that time. And the FM stations were awesome because they would play stuff you wouldn't hear on the AM stations. And the sound quality was better. So, you know, I can remember... and the other thing was, I don't know if these were big in Europe or Australia or anywhere else, but here in North America, we had the Ktl Albums. And I can tell you don't know what those are.
No, I don't know them, yeah.
So what Ktl Albums, they were like collections of all the top hits of the day, right? And they would take and they would put as many on an album as you could get. Well, you can only get 22 minutes on the side on an LP, you know, on a wax LP. And so you got 44 minutes, and they sometimes, I swear, would get 44 songs on there because they'd take all of these songs and they'd edit them down. You know, they'd edit out the solos, they'd edit out the intros, they'd edit out the bridge, they'd edit out the fade out. So really all you got was the verse, the chorus, the verse, the chorus. But they were great songs, like, you know, Eric Clapton, you know, Layla. I've got an album with a 2-minute version of Layla on, and that's the one that sold me on Eric Clapton, wow. Right? Or Alice Cooper, or, you know, anything you would hear on the radio. So what I was listening to was really those Ktel albums, and over that time from, you know, 11, 12, 13, you know, probably a good 5 years up until I was 16, I just kind of really narrowed my focus by buying those albums, going, I like these guys, I like those guys, I like those guys. I remember the first time I actually heard a song, the full version of a song. It wasn't the Ktl version, and I was just amazed. And I think it was Alice Cooper. I think it was "School's Out," and I was just like, "There's more of that song," you know. And so I started looking at all these songs that I really liked and these bands that were on these compilations. I didn't know they did their own albums, right? I didn't know you could buy a whole album of music by those guys, right? And so I went out and I bought Eric Clapton. I can't remember the album, the one with cocaine on it, you know, because everybody listened to that song in those days. And I put that album on, and it was like heaven. It's like, first thing was, oh, there's only 9 or 10 songs on here. But second thing was, yeah, but they're really long, you know, and they play solos and they do all this other stuff. So, you know, Three Dog Night was a band that really stuck out for me. I was really into the Guess Who and Bachman Turner Overdrive. When I started playing, I always say that Bachman Turner Overdrive was the reason I started playing, you know, taking care of business. Everybody knows taking care of business. And I had this idea that was what I wanted to do, and that was how I wanted to sound. And I bought every BTO album and learned a lot of those songs, you know, and then I found out Randy Bachman had come from a band called the Guess Who. And so I started listening to Guess Who, and like, you know, everybody again knows American Woman and, you know, some of these songs, but they had a lot of really great songs, and they had a singer who just blew me away. Burton Cummings, I still think, is one of the greatest singers in music ever, you know, in rock music. And I liked the way that he wrote, and it was kind of even more sophisticated than BTO. It was more dense. There was more to listen to, probably because, you know, Cummings is a keyboard player and Randy Bachman's a guitar player. So I always say to people that I started because of BTO. That's what made me become a guitar player. But I stayed a guitar player because I discovered Rush. And Rush was it for me. You know?
Yeah, for a lot of people, I think.
I remember going to there's a mall. I still live in the same town I grew up in. I'm like 3 minutes from where I grew up. And there's a mall just, you know, near here. And in one corner of the mall, there was a record store. It was called A&B Sound. And I remember walking in there, and looking at this whole big display of albums. It was 2112, right? And it was a new album at that time, and All the World's a Stage was also being featured. So this is probably a year after 2112, but they had this whole wall of 2112 albums, and they had it turned around where they had the picture, and they had, you know, Alex and Neil and Geddy, right? And I looked at that picture, and it was playing, and I thought, man, that chick can sing really high. And then I looked at the pictures, and you look at the picture, and I totally, for the first 3 or 4 months I was listening to Rush, totally thought Geddy Lee was a girl, you know, because of the high voice and just the long hair and the, you know, all the, you know, the frilly clothes they would wear and stuff. But those albums made me, I knew I was a guitar player then. It was done. And especially All the World's a Stage. You know, I really love live albums. I'm always more interested in the first 2 or 3 albums a band does when they're really trying to get there and they don't have the budgets, and they're really working hard, and they're trying to innovate, and they're trying to do their thing, and they're reaching farther than maybe they can. And I really like that kind of music and that approach. It really comes through that they really want this. They might not be as polished as they're going to be when or if they get big, but you can really hear the honesty in it. And I also like the live albums. You know, live albums now are different because they kind of fix them in the studio a lot. But
they do,
you know, in the 70s and 80s, you bought a live album, you kind of were getting the experience. So I would make up my mind whether I liked the band on how good the live album was. And the live albums are always my favorite. And so back to All the World's a Stage, that one came out, and that to this day, that's one of my favorite albums. I still listen to it a lot. And it's the only album ever that I learned every guitar part, note for note, backwards and forwards. And I listened so closely, I even know where Alex Lifeson broke a string in the encore and they overdubbed it in the studio, you know, and I can hear that every time I listen to it, you know. So, yeah, so that was kind of where it was at, you know. And I mean, all the other bands that people were listening to at that time, you know, Aerosmith, Clapton, Led Zeppelin, you know. Yes, I had some friends who were really into the original prog bands, you know, Yes and Gentle Giant and you know, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you know, and all of those bands. I got really into that stuff too, but not in the way just the straight meat and potatoes rock, you know. I was really into, but that was kind of where it was all at for me. And it's kind of, that informs you, you know. I still think of those tones, those sounds, those songs when we're recording, you know, even if we do something that's more dense or, you know, more layered, I'm still really thinking of how does this sound as a meat and potatoes song, you know? Right.
Well, I suppose, like when you are sort of putting songs together, you know, there's always so many ways of playing around with it, both in the studio and also when you are rehearsing. Because obviously, by the time you're taking it in the studio, as you're saying, like you can start to layer stuff. You can be creative with the sound and all that. But I suppose the whole sort of meat and potatoes out of a lot of the bands that you mentioned there, it's like. It's not exactly what I would call meat and potatoes. Like Led Zeppelin, you know, one of the greatest rock bands of all time is in my opinion everything. But you know, they're so innovative back in the day. Yeah. Their sound, their rhythms, the riffs, the way that they wrote songs is phenomenal. And it's just like a lot of the bands you had back in that era. Is like just doesn't define rock the same way as you hear rock today. Like when a new rock band comes out today, it's such a radical distant sound.
We're getting into grandpa territory here. You know, they don't do them like they used to. But, you know, it's true. You know, like music is. I'm not really sure where the music industry is these days, because what they call the music industry these days, I call entertainment. You know, it's a different thing. You know, and those bands like Led Zeppelin, you know, the Eagles, you know, their first albums. I mean, you listen to those albums and you can hear sloppy playing, you can hear mistakes, you can hear punches. You know, you can hear the singer hits a flat note or he goes way sharp on something, and they left that stuff on there, and you don't hear that anymore. You know, and so again, like I say, grandpa moment, right? But it's like they just don't. It's just not like that. You get an impression when you listen to the music, especially from that time and into the 80s, that those guys were standing in a room together, facing each other, playing, having a really good time. You know, it wasn't, you know, all these guys down in their basement with their headphones on, listening to something somebody's already laid down, and then they're trying to catch a vibe, right? You know, and put it down. You know, you could hear that interaction. And to me, that's music. That's what I like, you know. We were talking about that the other day about jams, you know. There's another, you know, big thing that happens is all these clubs, they want to have their Saturday matinee and they want to have their jam, you know. And to me, that's not a jam, because what it is, it's all these guys, and I'm not slagging them, you know, they're playing and they're working really hard to play what they play, but they all go up and try and sound exactly like the band they're doing the cover tune of, you know. And to me, that might be fun, but that's not really a jam. I like to jam. I like to get together with musicians that are, you know, maybe worse, maybe better, you know, but we're all getting together and we're going to play something that nobody's ever heard, right? We're going to, you know, call a progression, and we're going to play, or maybe somebody's just going to start playing some chords and somebody's going to start playing along. People are going to do things, and you just make something up, you know, and you don't go away from that and go, hey, we got to record that, or, you know, we got to put that down. It was just a jam. It was just musicians talking together, you know. And that's always the stuff that draws me to music, is just the people interacting. If I can hear that on a record, that's a record I'm going to buy. You know, if I can see that when I go and watch a band, that's what I'm going to go see. You know, productions, you know, when we play and always when I played, I mean, I like bands that put on a show, you know, like, don't get me wrong. I don't want everybody just sitting there, you know, but I don't want the spectacle to be the thing that I remember. You know, I don't want the lights. I don't want the, you know, all of that stuff and the glitter. That's not what I want to remember the band for. I want to go, wow, that was awesome music. And they ran around and did all this other stuff, you know. So I don't know if that makes sense. This is just
no, it makes perfect sense. And I just wrote it down here. I love your terms about, you know, having a jam. That's musician speaking, which is so accurate. Like it is, you know, it's like you're each, like you have your own instrument, which is ultimately like your language, but you all communicate together. So you're right. Like when you have a jam, like just let loose, you know, play, like be improvised, let it go.
Yeah, and it's always really cool, right? Because it's not like you're playing, you know, some shred tune, right? And some guy, you know, on a whole ton of notes, but some guy, you know, you're sitting there playing, and some guy just plays two notes, and you kind of go, you know, what was that? You know, and you can sit down and you talk after that, right? And hey, dude, how did you do that? That was two notes, and they're like, I didn't want to play anymore. You know, like I can't say that. How did you do that? You know, so definitely it's a communication, and you should get the feeling that the band, you know, on a recording, you should get that feeling that they're communicating.
So, in regards to sort of speaking language, like how, in regards to your guitar playing, like how did you sort of evolve that, starting at 13? And you said you had 2 years of teaching, or you had lessons for 2 years. So how did you progress it after? How did you sort of develop your style?
That was really cool, because, you know, I mean, at that time in school we had industrial arts, right? You could take an option and you could study something different. So what kind of happened at that time was I got into music, rock. Jeff Beck, I forgot to mention Jeff Beck. I have been a Jeff Beck fan. Like, he was the other reason I stayed as a guitar player. And I can't believe I didn't mention that earlier. I don't play anything like Jeff Beck, but he inspires me. But anyway, at that time, I had gotten an interest in electronics too. So we'll keep this more about music. I tend to go way off into the weeds.
That's fine. That's fine.
I had my second guitar teacher was, I thought, a really cool guy, and he was a lot like me. Like every time he told me to check out a band, it was a band I thought was amazing. He's the guy who turned me on to Jeff Beck and, you know, Van Halen and all those great bands. And he was in university studying to become an electronics engineer, and I had an interest in electronics. So I had a lot to talk about with this guy. He also was a very accomplished classical guitar player and flamenco guitar player. So wow. In terms of progression at that time, you know, I took my first lesson. They give you the little book with row, row, row your boat, and here's, you know, C, G, and D, you know. Yep. And they gave me this book, and he sent me away, and he said, okay, this was my first guitar player, he said, or guitar teacher. He said, okay, just the top part of this page. I want you to come back next week and play me the top part of this page. And it was like row, row, row your boat in D with a D chord, and, you know, how to play the D chord, easiest chord you can play. And so I went home, and after 5 minutes, I'm done. You know, I've got it all down, and I'll remember it next week. So I went through the whole book, and I went back the next week and just said, you know what, we don't need to do with this book. So that first teacher kind of started taking me into different things. I think he thought classical and flamenco would kind of discourage me and make me slow down, and it didn't. So that was my first teacher. That was the first 3 months. And then summer came, and then fall came, and I got a new guitar teacher. And this was the one who was the electronics, studying to be an electronics engineer. Really good classical player, really good flamenco, played rock, knew all this great music. So I had a lot in common with this guy. And he would teach me all this stuff. We would, you know, one week would be rock week, and we'd play, you know, Blue Wind by Jeff Beck, or, you know, we'd play an Aerosmith tune or something. And then the next week we would play classical standards, you know, and he'd teach me those techniques. And you know, then the next week it'd be flamenco. And what I really like about flamenco is that right hand, that kind of, you know, that really brushy kind of playing. So there was a lot of things that he was teaching me that weren't really about notes. They were about being a musician and about playing and about technique, but in the way that technique, not just for itself, but technique for what it accomplishes. And so that gave me this kind of grounding in things that were not music theory. You know, it was a lot more in feel, even though we're talking about classical, and we're talking about things where typically people are sitting there with the sheet in front of them reading. And I wasn't doing that. And he wasn't teaching me that. He was showing me the techniques and, you know, showing me cool things to do. So when I stopped taking guitar lessons, you know, I took him through that year and then half of the next year. And then I got a different teacher because he graduated his electronics or something and went off to do whatever he's going to do. And I got this other teacher who was a banjo player. And it's like, no, I mean, I can appreciate it. I can appreciate the techniques and the frailing, especially 5-string, you know, that's cool stuff. But, you know, around here, there's a saying, right? It's like, what's the definition of perfect pitch? It's when you throw your banjo on a pile of garbage and it lands on an accordion. That's perfect pitch, you know. You know, and I'm sorry, I probably just annoyed a whole bunch of people. But so anyway, this guy was a banjo player, and you know, he tried really hard to teach stuff, but he didn't even know what I was interested in, right? Like I remember him teaching me Lido Shuffle. It's like, okay, well, that was a big hit song in the late 80s, but it wasn't something I was interested in, and it clearly wasn't, you know. So I kind of went away from guitar playing then, but I had all this grounding and this stuff that this teacher had given me. So I just went on my own, you know, and I played stuff. And I remember discovering Guitar Player magazine, and I still have every issue of Guitar Player I ever bought, including that first one. And what was really cool in that first one was there was an article by a guy named, I think it was Arnie Burl, and it was the Pentatonic Scale. You know, it just explained what the pentatonic scale was. I was really trying to learn how to make my own guitar solos. I could copy other people's stuff. You know, I had all those Alex Lifeson ones down. And when I would play with other people and they would play a song I didn't know, I'd just play Alex Lifeson licks, you know, and chords, you know. But it wasn't my stuff. And then I got this article on the pentatonic scale, and somehow it all made sense to me, because the pentatonic scale is really, really simple to learn and play, you know, in all the positions. It's not a big jump off to the actual, you know, the blues scale, which is more or less the pentatonic scale with, you know, a couple accidentals in there. And I got that article, and I started, it talked about how you could increase your soloing vocabulary with that. So that became kind of my little Bible page, was to learn these pentatonics and just learn how to play solos, making them up out of this little pentatonic thing. I still base everything on, can I see it, you know, the pentatonic shape here, right? You know, I've got some different musical education since. I understand theory, I can read music, you know, those kind of things. But everything I do, I always relate back to the pentatonic scale. That's my skeleton, you know, and then I can throw these other notes in there depending on what our chord progression is and stuff. So that was kind of how I progressed. I had this teacher who just showed me a lot of stuff, you know, without saying, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to be a classical guitar player, you have to be a flamenco player. It was just like, here, it's all out there, you know, just take what you like and do what you want with it. So I did that, you know, I guess from when I was 15 till I was 16, 17. And then, you know, and then you start your own band, right? You do covers, and you might write a couple of kind of cute little songs and stuff, and you go play for frat parties, and you know, I mean, everybody's done that, you know, frat parties, or you know, at the community center or at the school gym or whatever. And, you know, we were doing that too. You know, good friends from high school, you know, and that is the band that I first went on the road with. You know, there's 4 of us, you know, the drummer was my best friend, the guitar player was my other best friend, you know, and the bass player was the drummer's other best friend. You know, we were just friends. And me and the drummer sang, you know, the bass player sang harmonies, and mostly the drummer had a really good voice. It's not for me to say whether mine is good, but, you know, we thought we did well enough. So we sang, and we put a band together, and we all graduated high school. And it was more or less, well, hey, you know, well, parents want us to go to university or do this and that, so we're gonna do that for a year. But I mean, all of us kind of dropped out, and we went on the road, you know, and nice. You know, like I said, you could do that then, you know. Clubs would hire you to come in and play for, you know, usually 6 nights. You know, bars weren't open on Sundays here. So you would play Monday to Saturday. You know, usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday were pretty slow. So you could kind of just take it easy. You could do your new music. You could kind of, you almost treat them like rehearsals, you know. Sometimes you would just play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and it was party all weekend long. But you could do that every week. You could do that. You could travel, you know, we traveled all around Western Canada, and played. The one thing that we really quickly learned is that probably the drummer and I weren't strong enough vocally to carry the band, so we did add a vocalist. And then it was just school of hard knocks, you know. It was all, you know, all covers at that time, and you had your A, B, and C circuit, you know. So your C circuit, you'd play way up north. Your B circuit, you'd kind of play in places that were north, but you liked them, you know, or they were okay. And the A circuit kind of got to play the big cities, and you would work your way through those circuits, you know. And you know, it's like I say, school of hard knocks. I mean, you would just get out there and you would play in northern Alberta. There's a lot of really tough people up there, and if they don't like the band, they're going to let you know. So you really quickly figure out, I'm going home, or I want to do this, so I better figure out what they do like and what they don't like about what I'm doing right now. You know, so that's all the formative stuff, you know.
What year was this? For the first band?
I actually, now I am going to get grandpa territory. I first went on the road in 1982. Is when I first started playing, and I was still a pup. You know, like we were all still, you know, young. We didn't know what we didn't know, you know, or we wouldn't have done it.
But that's the way to learn. You know, you just gotta throw yourself out there.
Well, and it was great, and you know, like I got to do that for, you know, eight or 9 years. You know, I mean, by the time I was, you know, in my late 20s, I could actually play, you know, and I could do things. You know, it was really interesting when I went to college to study music. everybody else there was right out of high school. They were going to be a rock star. They came out of high school and they were going to rock star school. And you know, they were all 17, 18, 19. And here I felt really old. I was like 26. But I could already play. I just didn't know the theory. And, you know, I went to learn theory. Actually, what I went to learn was where I went to college, they had a really great studio. And they had a recording arts program. So you could go and you could major in composition, you could major in performance, you could major in recording arts, and there was something else, probably become a music teacher, which was never in the cards for me. And I went to do the recording arts, you know, to get in the studio and work with the machines and, you know, work with the equipment, learn how to be an engineer. I thought at the time producer and didn't think, I mean, I can do that too, but it was really to be an engineer. I really like getting the sounds and the tones. I mean, I can still come down here to the studio and turn my amp on, dial in a sound I like, and probably just play an A chord till 4 a.m, you know, and just be right inside that chord. You know, I love sounds and I love what you can do with sounds. So I went there to do that, but to do that, you had to be a playing musician as well. You couldn't just go and learn to do engineering. It was not, they wanted you to be a musician. So I mean, I was, like I say, I was already a guitar player. And so you would take guitar classes, you know, and that was cool too. Like there's nothing like being in a place where there's 40 other guitar players and you're all there learning new stuff, and you all have to play in front of everybody once a week, you know, and show that you've picked up what you're, you know, picked up what you're learning, and you'd see guys who really got something, and you could say, same thing like Jammy, you say, hey man, I can't figure that out. How did you do that? You know, or they'd come to you and say, hey, you know, how did you do that? I can't figure that out. You know, it was really great to be in that environment, you know, with all of those people. And, you know, like I say, I could kind of read music when I went in there, but when you went in there, you had to know how to read. You had to, your training, you know, you had to know the theory. That's what you had to learn. By the time you got to the end of your first year, you had to be pretty good with that stuff, you know. And I still can read music. I've always sucked at sight reading. If you put the notes down in front of me and I haven't seen them, you're not going to get the noise you want to hear. You know, if you give it to me, I can look at it and I can read it and I know what's going on. Or put a chord chart in front of me. I won't have a problem with that. And, you know, same thing with theory. There was a real period around that time where I was going through college, and probably for a couple years after, where actually my playing kind of, the best way I would say it was not as inspiring, at least to me, because I really started thinking about theory, and I started thinking about, you know, how does this note relate to the note the keyboard player is playing, or the bass player? You know, how is all of this doing? I had to spend a long time basically getting back to where I don't think about theory when I play. And, you know, I'm happy to say I'm kind of back there more where it comes out of me now. But I like having the grounding in theory. I like knowing the theory. I like being able to listen to a song and say, that's a really neat sound. Why is that a really neat sound? And to be able to figure it out. You know, so for me, you say the progression, and it was really weird because I actually went to make my skills official after I'd already had this like almost decade-long career, already making my living as a musician and recording and, you know, writing and that kind of thing. I never have been much of a songwriter. I come up with ideas, you know, and I've been really lucky to work with Salem, who's just like, she just blows me away. I mean, she writes really cool stuff, and her lyrics just slay me. Like, you know, you can take, there's a song on the new album called Sister Wild Child, and if you listen to it, you just think it's a really awesome, great party tune. But read the damn lyrics, man. There's power. It's saying something, you know. So I'm really lucky to work with Salem in that way. And there, I did it. I went way into the weeds. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. So
that's all right. That's I'll try and steer us back here. I can actually hear it. It sounds like there's a little. Oh no, it's gone now. I could hear a little bit of echo. at your end, but it's all good. It's gone now.
Okay.
It was just slightly, just a little bit before, but that's fine. So yeah, another thing, just now, because you sort of brought in Salem and One Soul Thrust, I'm sort of curious to see, obviously with all your skills. So like if you're like you play the guitars, you sort of figure all the sound out, you're doing the recording, like the engineering side of it as well. Like how much else, like how many other roles do you fill up in the One Soul Thrust brand? Because it sounds like you're kind of like the go-to guy when it comes to like the technical side.
Well, I'm interested in all kinds of things, and I'm the kind of guy that just doesn't go, oh, that's interesting. I'm kind of the kind of guy who goes, that's interesting. How does that work? So I have to figure it out. So yeah, there's I guess a lot that I do. It's kind of hard for me to talk about without feeling like I'm saying, well, look how great I am, or, whatever. For me, it's just interest in things. Somebody once called me an expert in something, and I was like, it didn't compute, because this is just stuff I'm interested in. So, I mean, yeah, I play the guitar. I don't sing as much as I used to, but I sing some of the backgrounds. I got I wrote a lot of riffs that ended up on this album. Like I say, I'm not much of a writer, but what happens is I'll sit playing and somebody, Salem, will hear something and she'll go, what is that? And it's like, it's something I'm going to record right now, and then Salem takes that stuff and makes it into music. So yeah, the recording engineer, the studio was all put together by me, and I source all the equipment we use, and I'm not really a gearhead. I'm not one of these guys that knows what the next new thing is coming out. I'm the kind of guy that knows what I want to do. And when, again, expert, I know what I want to do. And when I need to do something that I can't do, then I go looking for what can I do with it. So I put the gear together. You're building guitar
amps and all that as well. So.
Yeah, well, I talked about electronics. So, there was a time there, like, when we got out, what I dropped out of when I dropped out after high school, when I dropped out of university after that, it was electronics engineering. And, there was, I still, I have an electronics engineering background. I never finished a degree in it, but I've always had an interest in electronics. And, again, going back to, sort of the 70s, when I was like 13, 14 years old, the first Boston album came out. And I heard that and everything was so amazing. And then I found out that the guitar player, Tom Schultz, he actually made all the gear they played on, that kind of thing. So I went,
oh, wow.
I didn't know that. If this guitar thing doesn't work out, that's what I'm going to do. So, you come forward a bunch of time, all the time that I was on the road. If an amp would break down, we'd have to wait till we got to the nearest city to get it repaired. So obviously you have your spare stuff, right? But your favorite amp breaks down. Your spare amp is your spare amp for a reason. It's not your favorite one. So you might be on a tour and you might be out of town for like 4 months, and your favorite amp breaks down in the first week, and you got to play your crappy amp for 4 months, And it's like, oh man, I wish I could do something about that, Being young, and I already knew stuff about electronics, but it never occurred to me I could repair my own gear. Right. So I would always go to this. There was one guy here in Edmonton I would always go to. He was really good. And, I'd get my stuff repaired there, and then we'd go out on the road, and I'd always say, well, I hope it doesn't break down, And so went through through the whole career, playing in college and this and that. And then the 90s came around, and, people were playing all those big, refrigerator racks of gear where you would you'd put a delay in, or you'd put, and that was your sound, and everything was there. And you even kind of lost track of what your amp actually sounded like, because it was in there and it was going through a bunch of other stuff, and then digital amps, digital modeling happened, Line 6 and all of that. I got really into Line 6 for a long time, and they make great stuff. But one day, in about 2002, 2003, I started thinking, I haven't played a real tube amp in probably 15 years, and were they really that good? So I went down to one of our music stores here, and I walked in, and there just happened to be this old Bassman, silver-faced Bassman, Fender Bassman. And I had remembered playing one, sitting in with a band a long time before, and just remembered what a great clean sound that amp had. No real crunch, but had a really great clean sound. And so this Bassman's sitting there. I thought, I'm going to buy that and see if, see if tube amps really do sound that great. Well, it needed a lot of work. So it sounded okay, but not really better than anything. And so I took it to my old guy. I was surprised he was still doing it, because this is like a long time after I was, doing my touring. And so I took this amp to him, and I said, this doesn't sound quite right. Can you just look at it for me and check it out? And he had it for a week or something, and I got it back, and I retubed it, and I did this, and I did that, and I did the other thing, and it's sounding way more better. And I got it home, and I plugged it in, and it's like, it wasn't any better, So I went, well, I guess tube amps aren't really that great, right? But I couldn't let this go, because I remembered what it was like, and high watts are a big deal for me. High watts, I love high watts. So I couldn't let it go. The sound didn't sound good. And I thought, it didn't change at all. I don't think he did anything. I've got some electronics experience. I'm going to at least open this up and look inside there and see if he actually did what he said. So I opened the amp up, and I looked at it, and I went, I've never done this before. And man, I know how all of that works. That's really, really easy, really simple. So nice. I thought, okay, I'm going to make this amp sound good, So I did a whole bunch of studying and a whole bunch of reading, because I never just fly into anything. And sort of figured out, okay, what really makes a tube amp sound good? So it was a period of a lot of study, a lot of experimenting, soldering, putting things in. And I ended up with an amp that sounded really, really great. It was like, yeah, tube amps did sound that good. And from there, I had done so much stuff with that amp. I thought, well, maybe I can make my own, So I started building that's one right there. I started building my own amps, Still my main amp is a vintage high watt. It's sitting just outside here, but, I felt good enough about what I had done with this Bassman and how much I had changed it that I thought, I'm going to try and build my own version of this, And so that's how I started building amps. And, I don't, when I build amps, I say I sort of build amps the way that I cook, all right? I really like to cook, but it's not like I'm a chef, like it's like a steak, like you can do things to a steak, but nobody's going to invent a brand new steak, right? Yeah. Steak is steak, spices are spices, and you put them together in a way that tastes good to you. And that's kind of how I build amps. I'm not designing anything that is brand new or groundbreaking, but I am putting the spices in there. I'm putting it together in a way that I like. So, and 99% of tube amps, even the really high tech tube amps, if you look at a schematic for them, the basics, the things that make it an amp, all of those things are kind of, there's certain things that just are always there. There's just a way that an amp is. And so it's not really that you come up with something new. It's the way you put all those different ingredients together, to make something you like, something. So that's what I do when I build the amps. And of course, you get a lot of satisfaction doing that. You can also look at amps. A good example is a Fender Champ. It has a really good reputation, as a good sounding, little 8 watt amp. And they're very, very, very simple. And you can take and build the exact Champ circuit, but you can change some of those parts, like to the transformers, use bigger transformers, use a solid state rectifier, do these things, and you can plug that amp in, and there's no way it sounds like your dad's Champ. It sounds like a Champ on steroids. So there's a lot of improvements you can make that aren't really design or groundbreaking. It's just things, changing your choice of components in what you build. So that's what I got into about building amps. And lately, what I've gotten back to more is, looking at the amps that more to that more to that philosophy, looking at the amps that I really like and going, okay, I really like this amp, but this is what I don't like. This is what I don't like. So how can I take that basic amp that I really like, and what do I need to change to really make it the way that I think it could sound, and so that's how I'm doing amps now.
And are you able to just listen to an amp and just hear, I think this needs a bit more pepper or oregano, like because talking about your spice and your cooking, like can you literally just hear this needs this? I'm by no means very technical at all, but just by listening to an amp, you kind of know what to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, not as if I'm the one playing it and listening, it's different. I always think it's really weird to play the guitar and dial in a sound and go, man, that's awesome, I love that sound, and you record it, and or even play in a looper, so it's going all through the same gear, but then you stop playing and you listen and your experience is completely different. And so when you say when I listen to it, when I'm playing it, I kind of more wonder what I could do. But when I'm just listening, if somebody else plays one of my amps, or like I say, if I play something in a looper and let that play on my amp, then I can really get a really good idea of, what do I need to change? And I have, from years of standing behind the drummer or beside the drummer, and the cymbals, I don't hear some things as well as I used to. So, I have to, kind of focus and pay attention. But yes, I can hear it and hear what I want to change, as long as I'm not the guy playing it. It's like when you're playing, for me, when I'm playing the guitar into an amp, it's kind of like I'm part of that whole entity. And I don't really know. I don't really know what needs to happen or doesn't happen. I just know I feel good or I don't feel good. But if I'm listening to somebody else play, or, I listen to a certain kind of an amp and I go, yeah, I would change this or I would change that. That's sort of where I get my ideas. And like I say, building the way that I cook, which is by smell, with tube amps, it's like, okay, I think I need more gain, I'll change that resistor. I think I need more high end, I'll bridge this with a capacitor, or I think I need mids, whatever, and so it'd be a lot of designing by taste, right? Like just keep doing it till it feels right.
But again, I was about to say, but then at the end, by the time you've come up with this perfect recipe, have you actually written the whole thing down? Like, would you be able to duplicate it?
Yeah. If I really like it, I do. A lot of times I don't. My process kind of starts out with a schematic. The idea that this is what I know will kind of be in the ballpark, and then I'll start tweaking things. And if I kind of like it, but I'm not really too sure, and either I give up on it or I don't come back to it for a year or 2 years or whatever. I won't really document it at that time, but if I get it laid out and I go, wow, like that sounds good, then yeah, I'll blueprint it, I'll do it then. Yeah.
Another sort of fun aspect about sound in general, not just guitar sound, but I suppose like sound, as a recording engineer in general, is the fact is, like you mentioned yourself, like you mentioned line 6 and the way that you can sort of have digital modeling these days.
Yeah.
Like, would it be fair to put out the question saying, like, is a guitar amp even applicable this day and age? Because you can model everything now, and the technology is so good now, and like it's crazy. Like for instance, when I do, and again, like I said, I'm not a guitarist, but when I have guitarists over at my little studio here. And we're recording like some of the I use plugins from Neural DSP, which is I think they're a Finnish company or something. And some of my guitar mates that they come over and when we hook in, we play around with the sound. They go like, this is ridiculous. Like, you have this, I think it's like 120 euros or something, but you have this plugin that you can manipulate. You can move. You can move mics around. You can change the mics, distance to the cabinet. You can tweak, your high end, your gain, your treble, your mids, and everything. And then once you record it, you can do the same again by the time you run it through your DAW. So you have all this technology. You know, it's almost like, I suppose, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but would it almost be the same as like if you had like your vinyl, which is like, this is a good sound, like this is the true sound, and you have your CDs or probably even better, like your FLAC, like your unprocessed audio and all that.
It's a lot like that. It's a lot like that. And by the way, if you're ever in a room full of guitar players, don't ask that question. Do guitar amps even matter? Because you're not getting out of that room.
I know.
It's kind of, I guess it depends who you are. And it also depends where you're sitting. Are you behind the guitar playing it, or are you out front producing and listening? I don't think amplifiers are necessary to make good music anymore, but man, they sure feel good. I mean, you get it listening to it. If you're listening for the right things, you know when you're listening to a real amp or not a real amp, and that's not really good or bad. It's just the way it is. But when you're playing, there's always a feel to playing through a tube amp. It's kind of like it's a little bit. It's almost like you're pulling it along with you. It's almost like watching a big semi truck go down the road and go around a corner. You know, the truck, the cab goes around the corner, and everything else sort of follows behind it. And you kind of go, "Oh, is that stuff going to stay connected?" Right? And that, to me, that's the way that a really good tube amp, especially with some nice grind and crunch, that's the way a tube amp feels to me. Yep. Whereas a modeled amp or something that doesn't have tubes, kind of everything feels like it's right here, you know, like it's all going down the road at the same time. Whereas there's this kind of blurriness or this kind of feel like you're dragging something. But as far as whether amps are necessary, amps are necessary. I don't think cabinets are necessary anymore. You know, I've really gotten into two notes products. You know, the Captor 8 and I have a Cab M down here. There's a few other things of theirs I want to get. And I don't know if you know what those things do, but they basically, they replace your cabinets. The Captor 8 is a reactive load. So you put it on your amp instead of a speaker. So you don't, it's silent. You don't hear anything. And then you've got a XLR out that you can run into your workstation or your console. And then through there, you can use plugins, you know, for your speaker sims, or you can use impulse responses or things like that. And to me, that's really where it's at. I love having a real amp. I always know when I don't have a real amp. And I got into modeling and doing all of that stuff because you just can't. I mean, my 50 watt high watt, I can't put that in the sweet zone like ever. You know, it's just so freaking loud. It's like, geez, I hope I can still have babies, you know, and you know, but it sounds good when it gets there. People, I think, used to think guitar players were loud because they were jerks, you know, or they just wanted everybody to hear what they were doing. That's where the tone is. So with the two note stuff, you know, and there are others, you know, Sir and you know, THD kind of started that game. But these reactive loads where you can crank your amp as loud as you want and nothing is coming out in the room. You hear a fan, you hear a little bit of buzz, but everything's going into the workstation. And even there, you're getting this big amp crunch, but you can talk, you know. So I really think amps are necessary, but probably not speakers, you know. Pedals and amps, you know. The amps are the engine, you know. And it's sort of like, going back to motorcycles, you know, I used to really like to ride dirt bikes and Husqvarnas. You know, Husqvarna was it. And you fire one of those things up, and it's just a 200cc dirt bike, but it sounds like the end of the world. You know, and then, you know, your neighbor buys his little crotch rocket, you know, and it's $30,000, you know, $50,000, and he fires up his little, you know, his crotch rocket, and it goes, you know, it's the engine, you know, that's a Husqvarna, you know. Modeling is kind of a Yamaha or something, you know.
Yeah, so, right. That's like a Tesla.
Yeah, I do think tube amps are necessary. They're not necessary in the way they were. I mean, I'll use modeled stuff. I'll mix it up. I don't mind. But my core tone is either that high watt or one of the other two amp designs of mine. I'm pointing at them. You can't see them, but that's one. But there's another one beside it. Those three are kind of the core to my tone. But when I got into the two-note stuff, why I bought that, like I've been using modelers for years, mostly for rehearsal, because I just can't be loud enough. And we've gone to in-ears, so everything is in here anyway. And the rehearsal room is quiet. You know, for a while we were putting the cabs in ISO booths, you know, over on the other side of the studio, so you couldn't really hear that. It was all coming in your in-ears. And that got to be kind of a lot of messing around and keeping an eye on stuff to make sure you had the sound you wanted. So I started using modelers and sort of living with the compromise and not having the feel. And then I started reading about, you know, impulse responses and what you really can do with those. And I sort of honed in on the two-note stuff, and I went, I'm going to try this. And so the first day I pulled the high watt out for rehearsal, like Salem kind of went, what are you doing with that here? You know, it's like, because they're used to, if the high watt comes out, nobody's going to hear anything else, right? It's like, no, it's okay, because this is the speaker, you know. And I put the captor down and I plugged it into the rehearsal system. And, oh God, it's just like my amp should sound, you know. And I thought this was just going to be something that would get me a little closer to amp sound for rehearsal, but it just sounded so awesome. When we did the new album, I thought for sure, you know, okay, we're going to record this. We're going to have to put some cabinets in the ISO booths. We're going to have to put some mics on and stuff. Didn't happen. I wheeled the high watt in here with the captor, plugged it into the board. We started laying things down, and there was never even any talk of using a cabinet anymore, you know. So amps are important, but you still, you know, you're modeling your digital technology. There's a place for that really makes things better, you know. And so yeah, I'm totally go to notes. That stuff just it's completely changed it, you know. And the album was, to me, so easy to make and so satisfying to make that way, because even on the other albums where we're using cabinets and we're miking them up, they were in another room and we're tracking, so it's not really the mix. So I'm kind of hearing my guitar the way I want to hear it, but not. And this, it was like, I mean, what you hear on the album, that's the way the guitars sounded to me in the cans when we were tracking. And it was so easy to make because of that. If you like your sound, you're going to play better, you know. And you get close to your sound, you're going to still play good. But if you really like your sound, you're not even going to think about it, you know. So, yeah. So, again, thanks, two notes.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, with technology in general, not just recording, not just guitar, but recording in general, because obviously, like, if you guys are recording everything here, I think you're doing most of the engineering when you're recording, is that right? Because then, sorry, my back end of that sentence was that then you're sending everything off to, was it Alessandro in Italy or something?
Well, and then, he comes here, you know, when we track everything, right, excellent, you know, and produces and mixes. So, you know, and that's the role. But you know, there was and of course he has, you know, that's the producer's job. He says, this is what we're going to do, and the rest of the band goes, okay, you know, because that's his job. But I mean, especially doing this album, you know, I always get stuff set up way ahead because, you know, you book your time. It costs you money to do, right? So you want to optimize that. So I do all the things that I can do before we start actually tracking the album, and Ali gets here. You know, same thing with Salem and Todd. Like we all prepare as much as we can. So this last album was really cool that way too, because I had the two note stuff, and I had spent a lot of time working on getting tones, because I knew I wanted to at least use the two note stuff for at least some of the album. Like I say, it ended up on all of it. So I had really dialed in my guitar tones, my effects, you know, all the things. I had a really clear idea what I was going to do with everything. Salem is awesome at that. She always knows how she wants things to go, you know, and then me and Todd kind of wreck that sometimes, yeah, you know, but you know, but, and Todd too, like he, you know, we all do our homework, you know, we really know what we're doing when we come in, we're really prepared to do it. And it was the same thing. It's always the same thing setting up for the albums. The thing that I guess I nailed, really this time was like, we set the drums up and I mic'd them, and I wasn't even really thinking about it. I just kind of put them, well, this is probably going to work. This is probably going to work. We'll put this on the kick and, you know, set all of that up. And, you know, we sound checked it down here, and I recorded drums in particular, Todd just banging away on his drums, and I recorded it so we could hear how that sounded playing back. And then when Ali got here, I said, well, you know, we've set everything up, and I did a sound check and played what we played, and he went, yeah, that sounds good. We didn't touch a thing, you know. I mean, wow. It was really great to make this last album. You know, I mean, I'm the guitar player, I played on it, so yeah, it was a great album, right? Of course I'd say that, but it was really great to make this album because, at least from my point of view and my experience of it, was we came down here and we just started recording, and we did it beginning to end. You know, there wasn't, you know, we need a different sound. Let's go rent an amp. You know, we need to do this. The drums aren't sounding right. You know, it just was kind of, we started and we went and we did it. You know, and I'm really happy with this album. It really sounds like the kind of album I would like to make, and so I've done it. I like it, right? And so I forget where we started, but this is where we've ended up, you know. Whether amps are important or not. Yes, amps are. I'm going to keep saying that.
Gonna have nightmares about that one tonight. In regards to the recording process, like roughly how long did that take? Because again, if you are like, it sounds like you guys have a really, really good and very, very, very well-oiled machine. So again, if you fly the other guys over, you know, you got the drums set up, the guitars all sorted. How quick can you bang out an album, or how long did it take you to make this last album?
I think we did this one tracking, okay, not mixing and mastering and all of that, but tracking. I think we did it in 8 days.
Wow, that's
so well,
fantastic.
we were really ready to do this album. Like, I mean, we really wanted to. Something really happened in 2018. You know, we were out in the mountains, and Salem just said, you know, we're going to do an album next year. You know, we hadn't even been thinking about or talking about it, but right from when she said that, like, I said, yeah, I'd like to get, I'd like to, you know, I'd like, Salem said we would like this album to be more riffy. And I went, yeah, I mean, riffy, you know. And so I started thinking riffs. Riffs started coming right away. Songs started coming right away, you know. For that whole year before we did the album, the album was being written, and we were playing it, and we were, every song we were excited about. And I mean, there was one song that was planned for this album that didn't make it on the album. And only just barely didn't make it. It just wasn't quite there. But we were really ready to make, we're always really ready to make an album when we make an album. I mean, we don't make them every year, you know, we do them when the time comes right. And this one, just something was, that was a really neat year, 2018 to 2019. Like, things just really worked and really felt good. There were a lot of good riffs on the album. You know, I'm really happy with the way I played. Todd just, you know, Todd always, you know, Todd has a certain kind of a feel. Like, I just couldn't play with somebody else, you know. It's just, we work together, and it's the same with Salem. Like I said, I mean, she writes such interesting things into her songs. Lyrically, it's like I can just sit down and read the lyrics top to bottom all the time. She says so much. But even musically, you know, Salem likes to kind of play down her guitar playing. You know, well, you know, I'm just flying away on chords or whatever, but she has a sound, like, and right from the first, I was thinking about this, you know, after we did the last album, right from the very first One Soul Thrust album, so 10 years, I don't think she's touched anything on her amp or her pedals or anything. And she uses that same sound, and it works in everything. And it is always like, if I put the tracks on and I turn Salem's rhythm guitar off, it doesn't sound like us anymore. So
wow.
So this album had a real energy and a real sound. It's kind of like we came together. It's kind of like we made the album that should have. To me, it sounds like the album that should have come after the first one. We've done 2 in between. Nothing wrong with them, but this one just seems to be like that. That's really where we've been heading and where we've been going, And now we thought, okay, well, we'll probably do another album, whenever we do. Well, all of a sudden now, we're a year down the road and we're getting ready to release this one, and all of a sudden, some neat ideas are coming out again now. So maybe there'll be a new album next year too. I don't know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so when is the album coming out?
We haven't really nailed that down 100%. Sometime this fall, probably mid-October, maybe late October, early November. We had a really clear idea of releasing it in April or May this year, and then COVID happened. And we did the album, and the one thing we decided to do with this album is we're also doing it. It's a vinyl release. So,
nice.
Not just digital. We want it on vinyl. So, of course, the pressing plant shut down because of COVID. So they were only, they weren't doing projects for everybody. So we had to kind of hold off for when they would open up. And another thing we didn't even think about, talk about technology and weird problems, and I talked about getting 22 minutes aside. We decided we would do vinyl. After we got the whole thing in the can, we realized we had actually recorded a double album. So all of a sudden we'd been thinking single album, and it was really an album and a half worth of material we had. And it's just, we've already committed to this. We're not cutting anything off. We're not leaving anything off. So it's actually 3 sides are this album, and then there's going to be a bonus side of some of the songs from some of the other albums. And release probably sometime in October or November. I've just sort of sent the final information back and forth between our guy at the pressing plant, and they'll probably have the masters later this week or early next week. So, and then there's an 8-week lead time there. So probably sometime in early or middle, maybe late August, we'll actually have the vinyl back. We've already got the digital, but we'll have the vinyl back, and then we can, really make our plan there. It's not like we don't have a plan. We're talking about it right now, but nothing's, being officially said yet.
Fair enough. I've written down here a little question just based on what you're saying. Like, a lot of the guys I've been talking to that are playing in bands that I've had on the show, a lot of them are talking about like how not many people are doing like full albums anymore, because it's mostly like when you look at the music industry now, people want something to be continuous, so they want singles or EPs and stuff. Yeah. So you have this so you get an injection every so often. So you get a new song every second month or something like that. Would that be something that you guys would consider at some stage? I know, of course, like you are doing it your own way, and personally, I like the album concept better as well. Like I like the fact you have something that's done over a certain amount of time that would suit this specific album. But I, at the same time, also get the other side of the coin. So again, if you're a fan and you're sitting out there and say, "Oh man, I can't wait. I need a fix. I want a new song."
Well, we have done that, and we do that, and it's not like we won't do it. We are really big on the idea of an album, and a collection of songs that fits together, and that will always be our probably our main thrust. But we've done that. We recorded one song. There was a radio station that was really into us a few years ago here, and we recorded a song specifically for that radio station and released it to them. And it was only ever played on that one radio station.
Oh,
And
wow.
we said we could, but we could release it, but we said we're not releasing this. This is the only place we're ever putting it. You might find a recording of it on the internet somewhere, but as far as officially releasing it, we did that, and that was, like, basically to say thank you for that radio station, because they pushed us so much. We've also, we do things where we'll play stuff live, record something live and then release that track, or we'll release
That's
something
awesome.
that maybe we recorded in another time. We're talking about doing a few things like that. I kind of would like to put some things, I have a YouTube channel, but I kind of ignore it. I don't do anything with it, but I have some things that I like to play that don't really fit with what One Soul Thrust does. I really like acoustic fingerstyle playing, and I'm a huge fan of Bruce Cockburn, and so I've been working on some finger, again, COVID, I've been working on learning some of these Bruce Cockburn instrumental things that I really like. But first of all, I wouldn't really want to do that as a cover on a One Soul Thrust album. It just wouldn't fit, for us to play live. But I'd like to play these things, and I'd like to somebody see me play it. So I'm thinking about, if I get these things down to the way I like them, I might actually, do some kind of multicam recording and just, here's me playing this song, and then, so
Yeah,
we'll
that's
do those
awesome.
kind of things. We do, we do things like for the last album, when we had it almost all in the can, we were on the 7th or 8th day, we had a reception, again, Secret Rock Society, right? We had a reception for a bunch of our fans who could make it at a restaurant here in town. And one of the things that we did in that was we played them 2 of the songs, just a quick mix of the songs from the album. And then we also recorded them saying a line we've released the song Golden Souls, and there's, at the end of Golden Souls, there's a chorus of people going, they're here, they're here, they're here, they're here, they're here, they're here, they're here. Well, this is all our fans. We recorded them that day. We said, we're not going to tell you why, but here's an iPhone and just say, we're here. So we got all these people saying we're here, and then we put that in as a chorus at the end of Golden Souls, and then before we released Golden Souls, we said, hey, this is coming out, and give a listen, because you remember when you guys did that? It's going to be on this song. So those kind of things, like to do something different and engage your fans. So yeah, we probably, at some point there probably will be something we record and we release right away. We've done that 6, 7, 8 times. I don't know how many times, over the last 4 or 5 years. Again, covers. We're not a covers band, but if something, we'll play covers to warm up in rehearsal. We'll cover a song or 2 or something like that, and. If something really feels like us, we'll do it. And we've only ever recorded 1 cover, and that was on our 2nd album. We did our own version of Magic Man by heart. And what I like about when bands do covers, I don't want them to sound like the original. I want them to do their own twist on it, right? So, we did it much slower, much grindier. There was much more intensity on that, and we didn't stray too far from their arrangement, but we really definitely did it our way. And we got a few other things, like I say, when we rehearse, that we do as just covers to warm up, either because they're challenging or we just like the sound. And maybe one of those, we'll make it as an interim release in there somewhere, don't know.
Which cover songs are you playing? Try and give us a few.
Well,
I'm curious now because.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm playing for covers.
Yeah, do that.
I'm actually, again, with COVID, it's like I say, I'm doing all the same work I did before COVID. I'm just doing it all here. And what's really nice is, even if I'm doing work that isn't One Soul Thrust, or isn't engineering or isn't amp building or something, I'm working here with my guitars and my amps and stuff, all sitting around. And like I said, I got 5 or 10 minutes. I'll work on something. So one thing, like I said, fingerstyle playing. Oh, you froze. Are you still there? Oh, yeah.
I'm still here. Yeah.
One of the things, with the fingerstyle playing, like I don't do it as frequently as I would. So I kind of get some chops together on that, and then I don't do it for a bunch of months, and I come back and play it, and it's like I kind of suck at it again, right? So with COVID, I've made a real commitment to just practicing technique stuff every day. I try and spend an hour, just working on technique things, and a lot of that is doing something, covering something that somebody else has done. So it's like I worked on Dust in the Wind, because that's a really good workout for your fingers. And, now Bruce Coburn, I'm working on an instrumental piece of his called Deer Dancing Around a Broken Mirror, which it's an amazing sounding, piece, and you should look it up. And Richie Kotzen, influences, we talked about influences when I was a kid, but who influences me today? I'm really into what Richie Kotzen does. Government Mule, Warren Haynes is a guy I really like. So, I'm kind of covering things by these guys, and it's either something I know I can play, but I've never really played it. So I want to kind of see, how can I do that? How can I get that sound, or something that's challenging? Mr. Big, American Beauty. There's so many challenging things to play in there. I'm not a shredder. I don't play super fast stuff, but I can really identify with Paul Gilbert and how he plays. And really what he plays is stuff that I really get. I can hear it and I can understand it. And, it's kind of where I would go. It's just a lot faster than I do, so using those things for technique, and I don't have to think up something on my own. I can kind of just go, I'm going to do this. So that's the kind of cover stuff that I've been working on.
Yeah, cool.
As far as covers that One Soul Thrust is playing in rehearsal, I'm not going to say, because they might come out.
Hey. We should leave it like that for the Secret Rock Society to find out.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But so are you planning on recording some of that yourself and putting it out on your YouTube channel, like you doing some of the covers that you yourself are passionate about?
Yeah. Especially the Bruce Coburn type things, and I've got some things that, since I've started doing that, a couple of weeks ago, I was just sitting down in the living room, and I just started kind of just noodling. And it was like, again, Salem said, "What is that?" Something I'm going to record, and I listened back to them, two of them a couple days ago, and I went, "Yeah, there's a whole instrumental song right there." Or they might be a vocal song. They might end up being something One Soul Thrust does, but, so yeah, I'll definitely going to be doing some of that. I don't really know when. I'm kind of like a mouse in a maze, right? Like I kind of go here and I go here and I go here and I go. I have all these intentions of doing things, and then it's like, ooh, shiny, and I go over here. So I've got tons of stuff that I videoed. Woodworking too. That's kind of more of a hobby. But I started sort of flowing that over into guitar building, because another thing with amps, I've always worked on my own guitars too, and make them playable and, more playable, or do them. And I started thinking, well, I'm going to start building guitars. I started building, guitars from parts, and now I'm kind of doing my own thing, shaping necks and shaping bodies and stuff like that. And I've got lots of video that I've recorded, of that. So where I'm going is this whole shiny. I video tons of stuff, and then it sits on my computer. Tell
me about it. Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, but yeah, I would like to get Deer Dancing Around a Broken Mirror. I'd like to do something like that for our fans to show, here's what Jag does when he's not doing One Soul Thrust, and if I can write some instrumental things that I really like, I'd probably do that, and maybe some band instrumental type stuff too would be really cool. And that would be a lot different again. Michael Schenker, I'm really into Michael Schenker, and he's, from way back, he's got a song called Into the Arena. And that's my idea of a rock instrumental. You know, it's again really meat and potatoes. She's got a lot of energy. You know, it's not, you know, it's not a guitar fest. It's just an energy song. You know, so I might do something like that. Yeah.
Awesome. I think I'm just thinking out loud here, just based on what you just said, like maybe having videos of you, you know, pulling out your like a tube amp, or, you know, actually doing some of that stuff. I think that would be for, you know, for gear nerds. It would be super interesting to sort of see how that works.
I definitely you know, that's the kind of, I've videoed a lot of that kind of stuff, and I really do, you know, like I say, it's something I want to do. It's a matter of just saying, okay, I hate, you know,
find the time for it.
I don't need to look at it again, you know, and that's the problem. I'm going to have to watch it and edit and make sure it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, if lockdown, you know, if the lockdown comes back, or, you know, I'm staying home as much as possible anyway, and at some point here I'll probably get bored enough to actually sit down and look at some of that video and start thinking about how can I put it together and put it out. Yeah
Otherwise you could always start a live stream. That's how this started.
I swear too much for a live stream, so
that's all right. You're a rock musician, you're allowed, you know. It's it comes with the title as a
there you go. Yeah, people expect it.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking about COVID, how is the whole situation in Canada at the moment?
I think you know, better than some places and worse than others. We're being really careful. I think, you know, there are people who just don't believe it's a real thing, and then there's people who are in denial and don't know what they should do about it. And then there's just, you know, you're living this reality, and you got to do what you need to do to stay safe, you know. And to me, COVID isn't something that just is going to go away. You know, I mean, they start opening everything up. It's like, what makes you think this isn't going to come back? So, you know, we're still kind of maintaining that isolation. Not as much, but, you know, more so than we're seeing, you know, in a lot of other places around the world. I think, you know, I don't know, you say, how is COVID? I really don't know how to answer that. You know, COVID's COVID. I can answer what my approach is. And I'm still kind of trying to stay away from people. You know, number one, if I get something, I don't want to pass it on to somebody. And obviously, I don't want to get it from somebody. It could be really good, could be really bad. You know, if somebody gets it, you don't know till you get it how bad it's going to be for you. And I just don't want to risk that. Yeah. And the other thing is, you know, my mother is quite elderly, you know, and she's high risk. I wouldn't want to be asymptomatic and then, you know, give something to her. You know, I'm thinking a lot more about the other people in my family than I am really about myself. So, and it, like I say, I'm lucky. You know, I'm grateful. I can do everything I do without leaving the house. You know, and you know, we're also lucky that it's summer here in Canada, and you almost don't know because the weather's not that good. But I mean, we can, you know, hop in a car and drive 3 or 4 hours and spend a day hiking in the mountains and not see anybody and come back, you know. Same thing where you are in Australia. Like I said, when I texted when Salem was interviewing, well, you know, surfing, you know, I like to surf, you know. I'm sure, you know, I don't know how the beaches are down there, but if I were going down to the beach, I'd be getting on a board and going out in the water where a lot of other people aren't, right?
Yeah,
you know, So, yeah. For me, how is COVID? It's just how I'm dealing with it, I guess, you know.
Well, the reason why I like to ask the question is that the echo is back.
Is it my voice?
Wow. I don't know. It's funny because it's gone now. So it might. I don't know if there's like a gate on the microphone that might, you know, sort of shut off. By the time.
Probably.
Yeah. But anyway, it's gone now anyway. But sort of the reason why I like to ask the question is because like here in Perth, it's like everything is back to normal. Like, you know, it's like this never happened. Like I think we've got 1 or 2 active cases. Like it's literally it's gone for now. It doesn't mean it can't come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Like for instance, like if you go to Victoria, you know, where Melbourne is the capital, you know, they had like 48 cases overnight the other day. So they're reimposing restrictions now. But it feels just so surreal here because it honestly, it's like it's never happened. And then you turn on the TV and you see there's like 35,000 new cases in the States overnight, and you go like, what the hell, man? Like it's like as I said, it's like it never existed. Like people are shaking hands, people are, you know, going to the pubs now, live music is back. So fingers crossed it stays like that, because every time the borders are open again, you get tested on arrival and you have to have 2 weeks quarantine and stuff. So they haven't even opened the borders interstate. So you can't even, from Victoria, you can't even come to Western Australia. So it's,
oh, really?
Yeah. So I think you can obviously, like if it's like for like a specific reason, if it's for, you know, like if you are in the healthcare industry, or, you know, if it is for like work stuff, and you can, but you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to head over to Perth for the weekend. I think you can pretty much go anywhere you want. Canada's really big, so I'm not about to drive to Ontario or something, but you know, I think you can pretty much go anywhere you want. I know that in BC, their campgrounds are closed to anybody who's not from BC. And I don't think that's so much an isolation thing as so much it's just a thing that, you know, okay, we know you want to get out of the house. Just at least go to our campgrounds, you know, stay in our province, and, you know, let's try and keep this contained as possible. I don't know. You know, I don't know how to, I don't really have, you know, an answer or an opinion for what everybody else does about COVID or how they should be about COVID. The only thing that I don't appreciate is the people who won't respect my space, you know, like to go out to the grocery store, you know, I'll wear a mask and I'm maintaining the distance, you know, and I don't, if you're not wearing a mask, I don't care, you know, and if you and all your buddies, you know, want to get and sit around one table 2 inches from each other, I don't care, but respect me, because I don't, that's your choice, but don't get in my space, you know. And Absolutely. What I'm seeing is people, number one, most of them probably just aren't thinking. They just think it's over, and they're just getting in your space, you know. And you say, get out of my space, and there is like, well, it's all over, you know, why are you doing that? But they're right from the beginning, there are people who just get in your face. Like they're flaunting it at you, you know, they're just doing it, you know. Yeah. It's like, man, you know, some of us had combat training, and you push us far enough, you're not going to be a happy man, you know. So yeah, no, it's really annoying to see those scenes, because again, you do see them from all over the world. Like we've had them here as well. You know, people. Yeah. For whatever reason, it's predominantly, you know, young people. You know, like, and they are probably. And again, I'm not generalizing here, but I'm guessing a lot of them aren't thinking about the broader picture. You know, like if I'm going to be fine. I said, yeah, but you know, you might be fine, but you're going to take it home to your parents or to someone who's high risk. Like I said, our middle son is special needs, so he's got a lower immune system. So we were completely bunged in for the first 6-7 weeks here. Like I left the house like once a week, and that was just straight to go to the shops to pick up groceries and came straight home, and that's it. You know, the rest of the week we were just here. You know, and that's again how this live stream started, because I just needed to talk to someone else. Like I just needed to connect. But yeah, it's crazy why people can't respect something that should be so easy to respect. It's the same as, you know.
I think it's fear, you know, really when it comes down to it, people just, they don't want that reminder that there's a new danger. Right. Yep. And they're just going to do all the things they used to do, because then they don't have to think about there's this danger that could be here. You know, so I don't think most people are being jerks about it. I think it's just, you know, people really don't. I think for a lot of people, probably everybody, it's a reality you don't want to face one way or the other. And, you know, some of those people that are just completely ignoring everything, it's just because they can't deal with it, you know. And of course, there are people who honestly think it's a fake, you know. I don't know. That's a lot of people to get on board for a big fake, you know.
Yeah. It's the same as you know, the Earth is flat and all of that stuff. You're always gonna have those people out there. And again, look again, respect to them as well. Like again, you gotta believe it. You gotta believe. But it's so. I don't know the right word. Like again, when you see stuff on TV, you know, and seeing people getting, you know, pulled into a refrigerated truck and stuff like, how can you not believe it? like it's Anyway, enough about COVID. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's and again, it's depressing. Like but it's a world, I suppose. But speaking about something positive, if you just wanted to know about the beaches here are amazing. Yeah. So if you guys ever make it down on these on this part of the world, you know, and this part of, you know, like I said, we're about 11:15 in the morning here, so very, very different time zone as well. But if you ever make it down here, like some of the beaches, especially in WA, down in Margaret River, you can look that up if you like surfing. I think it's top 4, top 5 in the world of the best surfing beaches. Yeah. And one of the best wine regions in the world as well. Yeah. Another question I've written down here, I want to ask you before I forget. Salem told me you had some Danish ancestry. Yeah. How does that come in? Because as soon as you said that, I was like, well, I am obviously Danish. As you can hear, my accent is, you know, a bit all over the place. But I moved here sort of 10 years ago, and my accent has changed a lot since then. Back in the day, I sort of sounded like a weak version of Lars Ulrich when I was talking, you know.
I'm second generation Canadian Danish, third generation Norwegian. So my mom's parents were first generation Canadians. Their parents were Norwegian. Oh, wow. And my dad was first generation Canadian on the Danish side. So, and both the we identify a lot with both the Norwegian and Danish sides, but somehow just Danish really seems to be what I identify with. I don't know. We've got a lot more, I guess, because we're one generation closer. We know a lot more about our Danish history. You know, interesting thing. You know, you talked about your accent. My grandmother had the most interesting accent. Like I can hear a Danish accent because of my grandmother, but nobody had the kind of accent that my grandmother had. Right. And I can't figure that out. Although I've never met many Danish immigrants that were my grandmother's age. So maybe it's something that changed over time, but her accent was quite a bit different. In some ways it almost sounded Austrian, but it's almost like Austrian Danish accent, you know. So I don't know. Oh, wow. My grandfather was a soldier in Denmark. He was in the Danish Royal Guard, so you know, guard the king and queen. But he was also, I think, the 7th son in the family. And you know, over there, anywhere in Northern Europe, you know, 100 years ago or 80 years ago, the first son got everything, and all the other sons had to do whatever they did. Well, my grandfather, after he was done being a soldier, wanted to be a farmer. You can't get land over there. You know, it's all taken. So he came over to Canada and settled here. And my grandmother was a pastry chef. You know, they both met in Denmark. They were both he was going through his military training, and she was going through her whatever they called the training that she did to become a pastry chef. And it was in the same place, right? Like she would cook the pastries that the soldiers would eat. Oh, so they met there. My grandfather came over, and then my grandmother came over to join him. And yeah, they were married, and they moved up to northern Alberta and started a family. So
fantastic. So do you speak any Norwegian or any Danish?
Tuck from and Velbeco. And I don't even know if I say them right. There's an interesting story there. My brother's a bass player, really well known and really successful musician out in Vancouver. And my brother really embraced being Danish to the point where he's learned Danish, he speaks it, he reads it. And there's a really interesting thing about 15 years or so ago, And my dad's brother, my dad's not with us anymore, but my my dad's brother, we all got a letter in Danish about 15 years ago. Excuse me. And I couldn't figure out what it said. Like, I knew it was Danish. I knew it came from Denmark because of the postmark. And I knew it was from a lawyer. And I thought, well, that's weird. Like, I don't know anybody in Denmark enough to piss them off enough that they want to sue me, you know? and I'm reading through this and I look at it and I see like 3.5 million krona. Okay. So, wow, somebody is suing me, you know, and I had no idea how much 3.5 million krona was. So, excuse me, I phoned my uncle because I figured, you know, his parents were Danish, like from Denmark, Danish. I figured he'd know. And he said, no, he said, I have no idea. I was just looking at this too. And I don't know. I was going to. So what my uncle did was he called my brother, and my brother told us what the whole thing was about. So yes, my brother speaks Danish. And what it was a long lost aunt had passed away, and they had split her estate between my father's family. You know, and it turns out, you would know this better than me, but it turns out 3.5 million krona is only about $3,000. So I didn't retire or anything. But
3.5 million krona is a lot more. If you had 3.5 million krona, that were in Australian dollars. I'm not too sure about the exchange rate for Canada, but that would be about probably approximately 800,000.
Okay, no, it was nowhere close to that. So maybe I must have been reading the decimal points wrong or something. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I couldn't get it right. It ended up not being much. But so my brother speaks, and I think he reads Danish too. And the funny thing is, my brother knows I don't really know any Danish or can't speak it, but he insists that when we're together, we speak Danish. So he'll say something in Danish to me, and I'll kind of maybe figure it out, and I'll answer him in English. Nej, you know, he makes me answer him in Danish, and I just say I don't know the words. So then he tells me what I have to say back, right? But I never learn anything.
That sounds like me when I'm talking to my oldest son. He understands everything because I only speak Danish to him, and he just replies to me in English because he's being a little shit. Like he can speak it, but he refuses. Like, he just decides not to because he's a lot more fluent in English, of course. Now, this is how you have to say it.
Yeah,
so.
I you know, now I wish I knew some, but when I was a kid, I wasn't, you know, well, our grandparents didn't really push us to speak Danish. I don't really remember my grandmother speaking Danish much. You know, she did, but I think they were here and they thought we're Canadian now, so we speak English. I don't know. Again, that was a different time. You know, it was they came here just before World War II, and you know, then there were a lot of people during and after World War II immigrating here, and I think it's just kind of everybody just said this is where we are now. So I don't know.
Have you ever been? Have you been to Denmark?
No. I would like to go, and maybe one day I will. But there's a lot of other places I like to go before I go there.
Yeah, fair enough. You gotta come.
My brother's been there. My brother's been there a couple of times, and I know that we're welcome. Like, we're still, you know, our family is still over there. There's not a lot of Mollerups in North America, and a lot of our family's over there. And my uncle has always said, you know, if you go to Denmark, you don't have to worry about where you're going to stay. They'll all welcome you. And my brother went and he said, yeah, that's exactly what happened. You know, my uncle's gone over quite a few times. It used to be a real thing for my grandmother, you know, to go every few years, and she always wanted everybody to go with her. And my brother and I are the only ones who never did get back there with her before she passed. But my brother's been there a couple of times since. Yeah.
You never know, you might be able to set up a couple of gigs or something. And
yeah, that would be cool. Yeah.
If you've got friends and family over there, they might be able to connect some points. Otherwise, I could definitely put you in contact with a lot of musicians because, again, as you can imagine,
I'll let you know if I'm ever going over there.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, let us. If anyone out there has got a couple of questions, try and fire them away now, so we can get to a FAQ shortly. One of the last things I would like to ask you about is something that I ask a lot of my guests about. That is, you as a musician, you've been doing this for a long time now. Have you got any sort of tips and tricks? Anything that sort of, if you look back on your, like since you started up until now, is there anything that sort of like these? It can be one or two or three items or three things, but is there anything that you would sort of say this really made a big difference, and this is a good advice that I would give to young musicians or recording engineers, because obviously you have multiple trades. But is there anything that you would say I would like to pass this on?
Well, yeah, one of the things is I think every musician starts out, and I think they look for what interests them. And so they find, like I talked about, learning all the Bachman Turner Overdrive songs and, all the Rush songs. And that's a really good thing to do. But you also need to develop your own voice and your own feel and your own approach to music. So never, I guess one thing I've never really thought, but I see a lot of other people think, is that because they can't copy someone else's song perfectly, then they're not really that good. They're not a very good musician. That's not true. You're a musician, so if you can't sound like that guy, that's probably a good thing, so enjoy it the way you play it. Don't give up on playing. Like, don't just say, oh, I can't play that, so I just, I'll kind of slough it off when I do it. Do it the way it feels to you, because that's where your style will come out, and also, I don't even know if people sort of have the approach when they start playing now. Like when we were kids and we started playing guitar, and we put band, we thought we were going to be Led Zeppelin. We really did, and I don't know if people even think about music that way anymore. But that's something that's really nice to think about. But it might not happen. So don't do it because you want everybody else to like you. Do it because you like it. And do it the way you like it, and find other people that like the way you do it, and then keep doing it with those other people, and then you can have your own secret rock society, where, I think to be a musician, not an entertainer, but to be a musician, what you need to do is you need to be with people that feel the same way about music as you. Not have the same influences or play the same way, but you all feel the same way about playing music, and you all feel the same way about playing music together. Don't necessarily play, with somebody because they're better than you. Play with them because they make you feel good when you play. That's
actually a really good way of putting it.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, but again, it makes sense, because again, like as you said as well, there is so many ways of trying to be someone else instead of just being you. Like, again, like I'm by no means the best drummer in the world. I know my limits, and within my limits, I'm comfortable and I'm good at that. Yeah. And I would, it's funny thing, because what you said made me think about a guy I had on, a drummer from a Danish/Swedish rock band I had on last week, who said he spends more of his time creating than rehearsing. Yeah. And I thought that's really cool, because he said I'm not a guitarist, but if I have this idea, I'll sit down and I'll do something on a guitar, and then I'll play my drums on top of it, and I'll have fun doing that. So I'm creating something rather than sitting and trying to mimic, try and get really, really good at this specific technique. Because again, he's a sensational drummer, but he decides to spend his time creating. I think that's the key word that just stuck with me,
And that's a really good idea, and that's a really good thing. I don't, when I talk about practicing, rehearsing to me is one thing. Like when you have a band, you rehearse, but you don't do it all the time. You just do it so that your songs are coming together. Yeah. But practicing, my approach to practicing has never been, sitting down and doing a bunch of really boring stuff for an hour just because it's going to make me a better player. I always try and do it in a creative way. So, I'll sit down and I'll, I used to call it noodling. I'd be working on stuff, but I would be creating at the same time, or even if I'm trying to copy something somebody else does, the first thing I do when I do something like that, I don't even listen to the song. I try and see, what can I figure out without listening to it, and how could, and I'll come up with my own version of it,
Yeah.
And then I might listen to the original and go, oh, well, actually that part that he does there, I'm not getting that good enough, and so then I might listen to it and try and figure out a part like that person's doing, or sometimes I go, this is my version, it doesn't sound like that, but you can tell it's that song, and I like the way this sounds, and I'm not releasing it to anybody. So yeah, spending the time creating, that's brilliant. That's I like that.
And again, also, like, it's especially like I remember growing up, and like when I started playing drums, like, it's really good to cover other bands and cover other genres, because it heightens your skill. Like you get to pick up on different techniques. I'm sure it'd be the same in guitar as well. But like I would put on a Metallica album and I'd play along to Lars Ulrich, and then I'd put on Genesis and I'd play along to Phil Collins. There's two completely different genres, but I'm still playing drums. I'm still he did that little fill there. That's pretty cool. But then ultimately, if you want to create, like you want to start doing your own songs, and that's a completely different mechanism, because then you have to come up with something that feels right for the song. When you, again, I've written it down here. I love it. When musicians are speaking, then you gotta develop your language within that conversation.
Yeah, and I think that sort of speaks to a person's approach to playing. When I play something and obviously I have my influences and the musicians I like, and I'll play something and I go, oh, there's a little bit of David Gilmour there, and everybody else would go, well, I don't hear that, and maybe you don't. I don't think I sound like David Gilmour, but I know that little thing that I played right there, I learned that because I listened to David Gilmour and tried to do something that he did. Yeah. There's another one. There's a certain chord that I think of. It's just a power chord, but I think of it as the Alex Lifeson chord because I learned it trying to make the sound that Alex Lifeson was making, that big flang E chord that he does at the beginning of I can't even remember the song, Xanadu. Where they do the down flang, that chord. I use that chord all the time, and I learned it from Alex Lifeson. And every time I play it, I go, "That's Alex Lifeson." It doesn't sound like him, but it's just that's where I got that from. It's my chord, but I got it from Alex Lifeson.
Cool. I think you mentioned to me at some stage about a mostly chord.
Mostly chords. When I went to college, like I said, I'd been already playing for 8 or 10 years, making my living as a player, and I did know a little bit of music theory. I mean, I knew major, minor chords, 7 chords. And then there's these chords you'd pick up from sitting in with people or jamming with them, right? So they were the upper structure notes, right? And sometimes they didn't, at that time, I didn't know the theory, so I didn't really know how they related to the chords we were playing. So I used to call them mostly chords, right? Well, it's mostly an E, which really means that the chord could be an E, but I might be paying, if it's a blues song, it might be a 9 chord, or, minor something, fluff, whatever, right? And the funny thing about the mostly chord was when I started in college, and I said you had to play every week. You had to get up in front of your classmates and you had to play a song, usually a standard from. It was kind of a jazz curriculum, so it was usually a standard from the Fake Book, and a Miles Davis song. I was actually a Miles Davis song I was playing called "So What." And that week, it was like maybe 3rd or 4th week of classes. And we had already gone through your basic major, minor, and your modes and your scales and all of that. And they were getting into more advanced chords. So that week was dominant 7 chords. We were supposed to learn the dominant 7 chords, standard kind of blues sound. And so what really worked for that. So we're playing these 7s, but at one point I put in what I was still calling a mostly chord. And it was a 9, a 9 chord. And I finished playing it, and the instructor said he knew why I played that chord, but he said, "What is that chord?" He knew what the chord was, but he wanted to know what I thought about it. He said, "What is that chord?" And I said, "Well, it's a mostly E. Because that's what we always call him. Well, he laughed, right? And why he laughed about it was that's the way that you're supposed to approach music. It's mostly E. I don't care if it's got a 13. I don't care if it's got a sharp 11. It's just mostly an E. And he said that was the greatest answer. And what he really liked about it was that I really didn't know the name of the chord. I just knew it fit there. I follow a guy on YouTube, Rick Beato. I don't know if you watched Rick Beato, but he's really, really great. He comes he's same age as me. He comes same exact influences, same kind of approach to everything, more of a producer than an engineer, but he really has an interesting way of thinking about music, and I really identify with it. And he talked about that in one of his videos about, I forget who he was talking about, but he said that guy knows exactly what he's playing there. He says, listen to this, and really dense chord. He says, that guy really knows what he's playing there. And he said, I'm not saying he knows the theory. I'm not saying he knows what it's called. He just knows that sound works right there, And again, advice to give to players, you don't have to be worried about what the intervals are, but you just need to know it. It needs to be internal. You just need to know this sounds good. You don't have to tell anybody why it sounds good. You just play it for them. They'll hear it. And so a mostly chord, it just means you're in whatever key, and it's the 1, the 5, the 4, the 2, the flat 5, whatever. It's just a mostly chord. It fits.
I love it. Fantastic answer, man. Excellent.
And then sorry, I'll interrupt with one more thing. The second year, the bass player from my band started in his first year when I was in second year. So he asked me to play in his jury because I was a second year, and nobody had second years playing in their first year juries. So I played in it, and he did the same thing. He actually, it might have been the same song. He was playing, and he did some bass chords in there, and he did the same thing. He did a mostly chord in there. And I knew he was going to call it a mostly chord. They finished playing. The instructor said to him, why did you play, or what was that chord you played there? And I just leaned over and I said, don't tell them it's a mostly chord. It's just like they're going to call you the mostly guy for a month. But he did. He said, "Yeah, well, it's mostly an E."
But it's still.
And then he looks at him and he goes, "You guys play together, don't you?" So.
But again, great story. And again, like it's cute because it's genuine. Not 100% sure. It's mostly A, mostly E.
Yeah. That's what makes being a musician fun.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All righty, let's try and have a look and see about some of the comments. Just trying to scroll up to the top here. Let us see.
Oh, you got to scroll to the top? I
got to scroll, yeah. Yeah, there we go. There's a fair few comments. We're just going to see if we can find any questions in here. Let's see. Oh, we got Salem who's talking to Todd here. This whether he's ready to move, packed, ready to move yet. But that's not you.
Yeah,
let's see if we got anything here. Anyway, I can give you a question that I had. Just a little easy one here while I scroll down here. I was wondering, where did the band name come from? One Soul Thrust.
Everything good in One Soul Thrust comes from Salem.
Okay.
It was Salem's name. We had a band before Todd started playing with us. We had a different project with a different name, and we actually and a lot like One Soul Thrust, it was very studio oriented. We didn't do a lot of live playing, but we were going to do some live shows for this band or for this this project. And we didn't have, at that time, a drummer or a bass player here. Our drummer and bass player were in Vancouver. So we needed guys to play with us. So we auditioned Todd and a friend of his who is actually going to start playing with us now, playing bass. So we rehearsed those songs, and the gig didn't happen, and other things just didn't happen, but somehow we really hit it with Todd at that time. And so we asked him if he'd like to play with us, and then just one day Salem said, this isn't that band anymore. This is like Todd is part of this, and we need a new name. And I was like, oh, I hate coming up with band names. It's the hardest thing in the world. And so I said, okay, fine. And I really liked the name we had. I'm not going to say it, but I liked it, and I liked it for various reasons. And I said, oh, okay, let's, sure, whatever. But, and then one day I came into rehearsal, and I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I know Salem said One Soul Thrust, and I went, that sounds like a band, and it's just, I love those kind of names. One Soul Thrust, what image does that bring up for you? I mean, there's so many different things that you can come up. And again, back to Salem being a great writer, a great lyric writer, and she really knows how to put words together, and One Soul Thrust just really sounds great. Same thing, the new album, Slaves to the Sky, Masters to the Mess,
it's a strong title.
I think that was a little bit more of a collaborative title, and it had a different, different start. It wasn't originally going to be an album. We had a different idea for that. But it's just such a cool way of putting words together, and Salem is the one who arranges those things that way. I mean, she could write a blues song and just say things that blues guys would never think of saying, and it would be perfect. Yeah.
No, it's a strong band name, and again, I love the title for the new album as well. I'm really excited to hear it as well in this coming autumn. Everything is upside down. But it's spring down here.
Yeah, spring, autumn. Yeah, spring. Yeah, it'll be our autumn, your spring. October is easy.
Everything is upside down. So I think you guys just had the longest day of the year. We just had the shortest day of the year. So it's completely upside down.
Yeah, the difference is you still don't have snow down there.
I think it can, like on the very rare occasion, I think it can snow a little bit in Tasmania and Victoria.
The shortest day of the year, we often have 8 feet of snow. So
yeah, we don't. I think as we were talking about just before we went live here, it's like I said, I consider it cold at the moment. It's like 10, 11, 12 degrees Celsius. It doesn't really drop below 0 ever in Perth.
Yeah.
So very, very different climate, but in summer, it gets like up to mid 40s. So that's not pleasant either. So, we have a question here. So that's from Don Turner, who said, who influenced you guys the most? So there could possibly be 2 questions here. So that could be one for you and one as a band.
Well, for me, I would definitely say Alex Lifeson. Don's a good friend, by the way. Hi, Don. I hope you're still here. Definitely Alex Lifeson. Could probably say that there's right now. I don't really feel this way, but probably Randy Bachman was really influential for me too. But definitely Alex Lifeson. I wouldn't be a guitar player if it wasn't for him. As far as the band, Todd's really interesting because he listens to everything. Like, he's a hard one to pin down. I know he really likes James Brown a lot, and if you knew Todd, that would kind of surprise you. But yeah, he's really into that. And I couldn't even speak for Salem's as a band. I think what influences at least One Soul Thrust is a lot of that. Just about anything from the 70s, really. I mean, like the late 60s, 66, 67 up to about 1980, there was so much. We talk about people working together and being able to tell that they're playing together. That just all of that, happens so much in there. And we're really influenced by a lot of that, and this album, that was kind of where we were coming from. We wanted some funk rock in there, and we got it. We wanted some blues rock in there, and we got it. We wanted some, something ballady, and we got it. we really didn't make something that sounds like one genre all the way through. And that's a lot the way albums used to be made back in those days too. Like, again, a good example, the Guess Who or Bachman Turner Overdrive, they'd do a pop song and then a jazz song and then a piano song. And then they'd, do something that would be more radio friendly. Like, they would really mix it up. You can't do that, if you're in the entertainment industry, it's all got to kind of have this certain sound. But I like those ones where every song, same band, but it's a different style.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of what influences One Soul Thrust. Like, we just come up with all kinds of stuff, hey, today's Glenn Hughes Day, hey, today's Chili Peppers Day, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's again, like it's cool that it also gives you the opportunity to sort of mix and match and you grab ideas from all genres. And that again also makes you a bit more sort of versatile. Sort of be able to diversify his sound a bit. Todd just mentioned here that he likes Duran Duran as well. So
yeah, I do too. Now Salem's not going to play with us anymore.
That's it. So we're officially splitting the band up here. It's one last question before we round off is what does the future hold for One Soul Thrust? You mentioned you might do another album now because you already had new songs coming up. But have you got anything on the cards, like for stuff you'd like to achieve in the coming years?
Yeah, we definitely will do more albums. I'll be doing albums when I'm 90. And so hopefully that'll still be One Soul Thrust. Right now, what we're looking at is, it's kind of turned into a big logistical project to release the album, with what's happened. I mean, a year ago when we were making it, we didn't know COVID was going to happen, so, in the near future, what we're working on, we know the release will be sometime, September, October, November, somewhere in there. And it's just how will we release it? Will we be able to do live shows then, or, do we have to do it a different way? So that'll be something in the near future. Like I said, some really cool song ideas have started coming around, probably because we're just spending so much time not driving places. We got time to actually sit down and think about music and play a little more often. So yeah, there'll be another album. I really have gotten bitten with the amp building bug personally. So I've got, I just had my Hiwatt on the bench for about 3 or 4 days and just buttoned it up and started playing it yesterday. And it sounds so amazing. I'm probably going to blueprint that and that'll be my next design, which is basically going to be based on this Hiwatt. And, I've got so the amps I built, this one's called a Jagster, and there's another one, a combo that's a Jagster too. And, I got a cease and desist. I'm not supposed to say it, but I will. I built one of those and gave it to Warren Haynes, Government Mule, Allman Brothers. Nice. And so that was the Jagster, and I designed that, and he liked it. They had video of him using it in the studio, and then it got taken down because I told a bunch of people that I built that amp, and I guess I wasn't supposed to, or I don't know how that works. But one of the people he endorses sent me a letter saying you can't do that. So, music industry again.
That sucks.
I understand, they have stuff at stake for that. Anyway, the Jagsters, I built them. That was sort of the first amp that I designed and built, and it sounds good, but I know so much more now that I think that's a good idea, but I want to kind of reinvent it. So I'm going to do that. And then I have another one up there. It's I call it the Pistolino. And that's a little Italian joke. And it's a little 50-watt amp, sort of really similar to the old Fenders, but it's got some twists on it. Actually it's 2-channel. It's got one that sort of sounds like a Marshall JTM 45, and then one that sounds like a nice, good, clean Fender. It works well as a pedal platform. You can put pedals into there and you can get some really good grind out of it, but it's a really nice, clean amp too. So for me, those are some of the things that are in the future. I talked about building guitars. I'm probably going to get a little bit more serious about that. I'm serious about doing those things. They're not what I would consider hobbies, but I don't really advertise for it either, because I really don't like trying to justify myself. I don't want to put an amp out there and say, well, you should play this amp because it's so much better than everybody else's amp because of this and because of that and because of the other thing. You know what? If somebody hears one of my amps and they like it and they want one, it's like, yep, you can order one, and I'll have it. I'll build it and have it to you in, 4 to 6 months,
Oh, is that how long it takes?
I can get it done in a week. Well, it depends on everything else, right? Because I don't do those things 24/7 or even every day, and sometimes I can't. If I'm working on an album project, I'm engineering an album. I'm there for the album, right? So if I really sat down and just did it, I mean, you can build one and have it tweaked and the way you like it in a week if you dedicate that whole week to that. But I also can't work that way. My attention span isn't that long. Salem will often say I have the patience of Job, and I do, but if I don't have to, I won't, So if I'm here and I'm building an amp and I just don't feel like doing it today, I'm not going to do it today. Same thing, One Soul Thrust and why we do it the way we do. It's like we aren't ever going to force it. We're going to do it the way that we like. So yeah, One Soul Thrust will definitely do more albums and more projects. I think it'd be kind of cool to do something quite a bit different for One Soul Thrust. It might be really neat to do something that's more acoustic, maybe not acoustic instruments, but more sort of tamed down, not so gainy, not so bombastic. Really, I'd really like to feature Salem's lyrics, and her singing more. I mean, the singer, you can kind of argue that the singer kind of gets featured, and I guess a lot of people listen to the singer, but I'd really like to do something where her songs, her lyrics, everything was really the focus. There's a songwriter I really like. I think she's from, I don't know where she's from, but Anais Mitchell. And Lisa Fisher is another one, like where the songs are really stripped down. Like you can really tell what they wrote and how they sing, and the songs just sound so great. And it's not about the solos and the drums and the bands and all of this stuff. It's songwriter stuff, and it's stuff you really, you get into and you listen, you're going to put the phones on and you're going into that.
Yeah.
So it'd be really cool to do that with Salem's songs. It'd be really neat to do a One Soul Thrust song or an album that was, kind of really, really focused on the songs.
But that again is so. I remember talking to her about lyrics in general last time as well, like how important they are to a song, because again it is something that a lot of people just listen to someone singing, but not so much to the words. So actually on that note, it's pretty cool. We're gonna finish off with a lyric video. Do you mind, just before we put it on, do you mind just giving us a little bit of a backstory on that one, Shimmering Wind?
Shimmering Wind. That's another one I don't know 100% for sure, but I think that riff started with me. But definitely that's a Salem song. Shimmering Wind it's one of my favorite songs that we've done. Both of those songs, Driving, I love playing Driving live. Yes. Shimmering Wind too. It's just Shimmering Wind's got a lot of stuff in it that sort of, I'm not making a comparison, but it's kind of, if I hadn't been a Rush fan, I wouldn't have played the way I did on that song. And so I really like that. Shimmering Wind's got changes, tempo changes. It's got odd time signatures, and it really came off in a really good way. It's kind of like when you listen to Money by Pink Floyd, right? Pink Floyd, yeah. If you don't pay attention, you don't realize that it's not in 4/4. You don't realize that things are popping in and out, and Shimmering Wind is definitely like that, with the 7 counts. And then the way we staggered the guitar riff at the end of the song, where, Salem's playing it on and I'm playing it a beat behind her, kind of echoing what she's playing. So Shimmering Wind, I like that because it's a good headphones song. It's a really cool one to listen to on phones, if I say so myself.
Got my headphones on now, so
yeah, there you go.
Looking forward to it. Jag, it's been a pleasure. It's been
awesome.
awesome.
I can't believe we've talked for almost 2.5 hours.
I know, it's crazy. I think you might have broken the record. I think it was like 2020. I think my last guest who had the record, I think it was like 2020 or 2021. So yeah, we definitely got a new winner here, and we're gonna add the song to it as well. So
cool.
yeah, fantastic. But thanks so much for your time on Monday night,
thanks.
and it's like Tuesday, almost Tuesday noon here. So yeah, can still have a laugh about that. But thank you so much, Jag. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for tuning in or listening along to the show. If you like the show, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to my social channels. It doesn't cost you anything, but it greatly helps me to build my networks and my chances of getting sponsors to keep this show running. If you want to take it to the next level, please head over to patreon.com/Stephen Helhammer and become a patron by joining the exclusive community there. You can start from as little as $3 per month. And for just a little extra, you get access to some fantastic features, outtakes, behind the scenes stuff, and much, much more. That's less than the cost of a cup of coffee per month. And that way you can help me build better content. I can devote more time to find awesome guests and just generally just keep everything flowing. If you want to be on the show or subscribe to my mailing list, send an email to steven@helhammer.com, and that is HELhammer.com. That way I can start sending you exclusive invites, random stuff, and messages that, who knows, you might enjoy. So that's it. Have a rocking day ahead, guys, and I will see you on the live stream or in your headphones very soon. Take it easy.